Hello there and welcome to our nightly news program coming to you live on All 24 News channel from Algiers. Coming up next. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune chairs a cabinet meeting devoted to discussing a draft law and special measures related to the finance sector. Also coming up, Algerian Army Chief of Staff Major General Saïd Chengriha affirms Algeria's rejection of any form of foreign intervention in the region in the guise of combating terrorism. Also ahead, OPEC Plus announces oil production cuts by nearly 1.2 million barrels of crude oil a day in an apparent effort to increase prices. And explosion in St. Petersburg cafe kills Vladlen Tatarsky, an influential blogger with 560,000 Telegram followers. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune chaired on Sunday a cabinet meeting devoted to discussing a draft law that includes special measures for obtaining alimony and several presentations related to the finance sector, including the digitization of state property, interest, taxes and customs, and the progress for opening the capital of public banks. The cabinet meeting was concluded by approving a number of decrees of appointments and termination of duties in senior positions in the state. In Algeria, still, Algerian Army Chief of Staff Major General Saïd Chengriha affirmed Algeria's rejection of any form of foreign intervention in the region in the guise of counter-terrorism. In a speech delivered during a working and inspection visit to the headquarters of the ground forces, the Major General renewed Algeria's will to give a new dynamism to counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahel and Sahara region. Here's Zahra Farjani with more.
As part of the efforts to fight terrorism in the Sahel, Algeria affirms its utter rejection of any form of foreign intervention in the region under the pretext of counter-terrorism. During a working and inspection visit to the headquarters of the ground forces, Algeria's Army Chief of Staff, Major General Saïd Chengriha, reiterated his country's will to give a new dynamism to counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahel-Sahara region.
لقد أثبتت الوقائع
Past and current facts and events have proven that combating this malicious scourge with the seriousness and necessary effectiveness remains definitely in dire need of a continuous, concreted and coordinated effort at the national, regional and even international levels, especially through keenness on the strict application of the resolution and legal tools to the United Nations, the African Union and other relevant bilateral and multilateral mechanisms.
The Algerian Army Chief of Staff praised the content of President Tebboun's speech delivered at the high-level debate of the United Nations Security Council on combating terrorism and preventing violent extremism, in which he affirmed Algeria's support to its neighbors and African countries in their war against terrorism.
وهو الأمر الذي أكد عليه السيد رئيس الجمهورية.
This was confirmed by the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, in his speech at the high-level debate of the United Nations Security Council on combating terrorism, where he stressed that Algeria continues its efforts to support its neighbors and the countries of the African continent in their war against terrorism and violent extremism, guided by its bitter and successful experience at the same time.
في ذات الوقت.
Algeria has remained steadfast in its positions of supporting African countries' rights to preserve their sovereignty and to keep them away from any form of foreign interference or terrorist menace.
Moving on to South African news, the South African Minister for International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, stated that her country, the host of the group summit next August, has received 12 requests to join the BRICS. Pandor, in statements she made to WION channel, indicated that the group is getting global interest, which is why it has received since last March 12 letters from countries interested in joining the organization. Algeria is among these countries, along with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Argentina, in addition to Mexico and Nigeria, as confirmed by the foreign minister.
The BRICS group is getting great global interest, which is why it has received since last March 12 letters from countries interested in joining the organization. Algeria is among these countries, along with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Argentina, in addition to Mexico and Nigeria. Members of the BRICS bloc will meet in Johannesburg, South Africa next August to respond to new accession requests.
Moving on now to some economy news. Algeria announced a voluntary reduction of its oil production to 48,000 barrels per day, starting from May until the end of this year. The Algerian Ministry of Energy stated that the decision, which was taken in coordination with some of the countries participating in the OPEC Plus agreement, is a precautionary measure that takes place in addition to the production cut agreed upon at the 33rd ministerial meeting of OPEC Plus on the 5th of last October. Still with the same news, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and their oil-producing allies announced on Sunday that they would cut production by nearly 1.2 million barrels of crude oil a day in an apparent effort to increase prices. The move was unexpected because leaders of the group, known collectively as OPEC Plus, announced in recent days that they did not intend to make changes in their policies. Foreign delegations started visits from Sunday to the Sahrawi refugee camps to find out about the latest developments in the Sahrawi issue, the situation of the Sahrawi refugees, and the functioning of the institutions of the Sahrawi Republic. Delegations from Spain and Italy held several meetings with Sahrawi officials, as they will also conduct field visits to a number of regional facilities in the provinces of Awsad, Al-Ayoun, Dakhla, and Bujdur, and local institutions as well. All right, moving on, the European Union announced its support to the government of Niger in the field of assistance, protection, and the search for durable solutions for asylum seekers and refugees who were evacuated from Libya through a project implemented by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees that extends to 2024. According to a joint statement by the EU and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees delegation in Niger on Saturday, the project will provide protection for evacuees from Libya who are of concern to United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees under the emergency transit mechanism in Niger. It also covers the organization of evacuation flights from Libya to Niger. In Africa still, Burkina Faso has expelled 2 French journalists working for the newspaper Le Monde and Libération. Officials from the 2 newspapers accused Burkina Faso authorities of seeking to stifle freedom of speech with an escalating crackdown on foreign media. Libération stated that its correspondent Agnes Favre and Le Monde Sophie Douce arrived in Paris early on Sunday after they were summoned separately for questioning by the military authorities on Friday and later notified of their expulsion. To the Middle East now, many Palestinian cities have announced a total strike after the Zionist forces executed a Palestinian young man in the compound of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Mohammed Osaibi was shot by the Zionist soldiers 10 times after they claimed he was trying to grab a soldier's gun. However, eyewitnesses stated that he was trying to stop Zionist forces from harassing a Palestinian woman. Here's Osama Ayadi with more.
Palestinian cities and towns across the country observed a one-day strike on Sunday, following a call by the High Follow-up Committee for Arab Citizens in response to the killing of Mohammed al-Usaybi, a Palestinian doctor who was fatally shot by Zionist forces after shooting him 10 times in the chain gate in Al-Aqsa compound. Palestinians consider the death of the Palestinian young man as execution, stating that al-Usaybi tried to stop Zionist soldiers from harassing a Palestinian woman.
They killed him in cold blood. He did nothing. They told their story about what happened, but we have asked them to show us the videos from cameras on the scene. If it was true, they would have never allowed us to open a mourning house. They would have demolished the house of the attacker like they do always. But what they say are all lies.
Citizens in Palestine responded to the strike calls by the High Follow-up Committee for Arabs, which held an emergency meeting on Saturday in Al-Hurra to call for a strike that includes all municipalities, public educational facilities and shops in Palestinian cities and towns. Usaybi is an only child and was caring for his ailing father as he worked to get certified by authorities as the whole town came to a standstill following the news of his death. Usaybi's family opened their home to mourners and waited for the Zionist authorities to release their son's body.
The man had been studying medicine for years. No stable man would do what they said he did. The man had been studying for 7 or 8 years, and he recently graduated as a doctor.
According to the family of the 26-year-old victim, Usaybi had recently earned his medical degree in Romania and returned to his hometown a month ago. Zionist crimes continue on Palestinians as part of their efforts to manipulate their public opinion, who is still protesting against the judicial reform project, which shows the extremist intention of Netanyahu's government.
In the Middle East still, 5 soldiers were injured following Zionist airstrikes near the city of Homs, according to a Syrian state media. Syrian air defenses intercepted the missiles and shot down some of them. The strike marked the 9th time that the Zionist forces have struck targets in Syria since the beginning of the year. To Iran now. Tehran declared the death of the second military advisor to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Mekdad Mekdani died of his injuries after a Zionist airstrike near Syria's capital. In all, dozens of Revolutionary Guard members, including senior officers, have been killed in Syria. The Revolutionary Guards vowed to respond to the Zionist attack. A report by the news agency Reuters, citing 3 sources familiar with the plans, stated that Saudi Arabia is planning to invite Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to an Arab League summit in a move that would formally end Syria's regional isolation. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan will travel to Damascus to hand al-Assad a formal invitation to attend the summit scheduled for May 19th. Russian war correspondent Vladlen Tatarsky was killed in a suspected IED explosion in a cafe in St. Petersburg on Sunday afternoon. Some 30 other people were injured in the blast in the street bar. Videos posted on social media show an explosion and injured people on the street, but it is not yet clear who was responsible for the blast. To Europe now. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin has conceded a narrow defeat to the centre-right opposition in national elections. The vote came just days before the country's NATO accession. Here's Mariam Zian with more.
Finland's right-wing opposition National Coalition Party leader Petteri Orpo has claimed victory with more than 98% in the Nordic countries' tightly fought parliamentary election.
Well, it seems that
Finns want to have a change. And I think economic policies are the main reason that the ongoing indebtedness of the government is risking Finnish welfare society. And that's why we won this election. So hopefully we can put on stable course to Finnish economy next.
Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin of the ruling Social Democratic Party conceded defeat. But she should take over next week when Finland will officially join the NATO.
This is a great day because we've done well in the elections. Congratulations also to the other winners of the elections. Congratulations to the coalition party. Congratulations to the Finns. Democracy has spoken. The Finnish people have cast their votes, and celebrating democracy is always a wonderful thing. So thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Marin, considered worldwide as a millennial role model for progressive new leaders, has faced criticism at home for her government's public spending and for partying. Although not definitive, Helsinki is likely to get a new prime minister after an election win of Petteri Orpo. National Coalition Party is now in position to lead negotiations to form a government, and its choices on who to partner with will be decisive and take several weeks or even months. The next government will have as a mission to tackle fiscal austerity, the energy crisis and the rising cost of living. The next government will have as a mission to tackle fiscal austerity, the energy crisis and the rising cost of living that has engulfed Europe after the Russian-Ukrainian conflict.
Still with election news, but this time in Bulgaria, where Bulgarians headed to polls in their 5th parliamentary election in 2 years on Sunday, amid voters' apathy and disillusionment over endemic corruption and political instability. More details with Salman Asib in this report.
Bulgarians are casting their ballots in the 5th general elections in 2 years on Sunday, amid raising anger and fears on the raging war in nearby Ukraine, hoping to end political instability and help overcome the economic woes fueled by the war in Ukraine.
I am a skeptic about the future of Bulgaria, at least the near future, because you can see what chaos results. As a law of physics, entropy, chaos is constantly increasing. The same is happening in Bulgaria.
Turnout is expected to be low due to voters' apathy and disillusionment with politicians who have failed to form stable governments and deliver governance in one of the poorest and most corrupt European Union member states since 2021. For his part, Bulgarian President Roman Radav cast his ballot in the country's 5th general elections in 2 years, hoping to eradicate political instability. He urged voters to come and play their role.
I say it once again that the legitimacy of the next parliament and government, from which we expect important decisions, depends on voter turnout. Let the official results come out first, but rest assured that I will not delay the procedure for a government.
Kirill Petrov campaigned on a promise to make Bulgaria a European country by raising the standard of healthcare and education and making the judiciary and prosecutor's office independent.
I voted for a normal European life, to have a normal European government, normal European roads, normal European healthcare, normal European education. I actually voted because I realized that there is no savior, and saving us depends on each and every one of us.
In the first release of results, it seems that the pro-Western coalition continuing the change and democratic Bulgaria had won a narrow majority with 26.4%, beating the center-right establishment party, GERB, which scored 25.5%. But in a recount, the former scored 24.8%, while the latter secured the lead with 25.9%. If the country once again fails to produce a functioning government, it could undermine its hopes of joining the Eurozone in the future and effectively using its EU COVID recovery aid.
Montenegrins went to polls in a runoff presidential election on Sunday to vote against a long-time incumbent, a Western-educated economist promising to lift the nation out of a crisis marked by no confidence votes into governments that has been locked in political turmoil. According to observers, President Milo Djukanovic, who is credited with leading Montenegro to independence and into NATO, could be facing defeat from the economist Jakov Milatovic, the candidate backed by governing parties advocating closer ties with Serbia.
I hope it will be a fair and democratic election. I hope that the civil candidate will win what we have been looking for 30 days. I hope that our people and our country will change something in our system.
To other development now, in a rare phone call since the start of the conflict in Ukraine, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged Russia to release American journalist Ivan Gershkovich, who is currently detained. Sergei Lavrov rejected the Americans' appeal and reacted by stating that US officials and media organizations should not make a fuss or attempt to politicize the situation facing the Wall Street Journal reporter, adding that the journalist was collecting state secrets under journalistic cover.
It was stressed that officials in Washington and the Western media must not take a fuss over this case with the clear intention of giving a political overtone.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday it was absurd that Russia had assumed the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council, adding that it is the right time for a general overhaul of global institutions, including the Security Council. For his part, the head of the European diplomacy, Josep Borrell, stated on Twitter that the EU will oppose any abuse by Russia of the UN Security Council presidency.
There is no form of terror that Russia has not already committed, and there will be no reason that will stop the reform of global institutions, in particular the UN Security Council, the reform that is obviously overdue.
Europe is a hive of strike action right now, with many employees unhappy that sky-high inflation has not been matched by higher wages. Inflation and consumer prices rise indeed paralyzed many means of transportations and caused cancelling of many flights. More details with Sofiane Kinturi.
Security staff of UK's Heathrow Airport started a 10-day strike for higher wages. About 1,400 security guards participated in the strike beginning at the start of Easter holiday period, after the last-minute talks over a pay raise failed. The strike has resulted in British Airways cancelling around 5% of its flights during the Easter period. The strike started also in Europe's largest economy a few days ago, which marks Germany's largest strike in decades, and is expected to cause widespread disruption on railways and at airports in the country.
We were supposed to go to Berlin, but our plane actually departed before we arrived at Munich. So there weren't other planes that could bring us to Berlin. So with the company that we booked with, they arranged for us a stay to an hotel near the airport, and so we're here waiting for a bus to Berlin.
Meanwhile, European airline leaders also called on Wednesday for measures to prevent chronic French air traffic control strike penalizing thousands of passengers using the country's airspace for transit, as Paris warned of new protests in the coming few days. It's worth noting that European inflation hit 41-year high last year, with consumer prices rising 11.1% in the 12th month to October, the worst rate since October 1981.
For more stories making headlines around the globe, here's the news in brief.
A violent storm packing high winds and heavy rains ripped through sections of southern and midwestern United States as it headed east, leaving at least 22 dead and scores injured, including the deaths of 5 people in Arkansas State, as first responders sifted through debris for more possible victims after tornadoes sliced through the state this week.
The World Bank has estimated the world's major loss as a result of corruption at more than $2.6 trillion annually, which represents about 5% of the world's gross domestic product. Therefore, the International Finance Corporation has warned of governments' indolence in facing the spread of this phenomenon, including its consequences that affect all aspects of life.
Asa Hutchinson, who recently completed 2 terms as Arkansas governor, said on Sunday that he will seek the Republican presidential nomination, positioning himself as an alternative to Donald Trump just days after the former president was indicted by a grand jury in New York.
Ryuichi Sakamoto, the Oscar-winning Japanese composer, famed for his scores for The Last Emperor, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, and other movies, has died at the age of 71. Sakamoto was also known for his work with the pioneering electronic music band Yellow Magic Orchestra, which he co-founded.
And finally, to some sports news, Algerian local team USM Algiers qualified for the quarter-finals of the African Confederation Cup after defeating the Libyan local team 4-1 on Sunday at the 5th of July Stadium in the last rounds of the group stage. With this victory, USM Algiers raised its score to 11 points in the second place of the first group, while Libyan Al Akhdar stopped at 5 points in the third place and bid farewell to the championship. And with this, our program comes to a close. For more, you can check out our social media platforms, and our website is always at your service. Till next time, take care.